Hi everyone, I'm Michaela. I'm a Minnesota Green Corps member with the Minnesota Department of Agriculture, and today I'll be covering some different soil amendments that you can use in your garden. Healthy soils are the basis for a happy garden, and there are many different gardening techniques you can use to keep your soils productive and happy. Adding soil amendments is just one such technique. Adding soil amendments can address certain soil issues like texture, pH, nutrient content, and organic material content, and we'll cover how soil amendments can be used to address those issues in today's video. The first step before you think about using any soil amendments is to get a soil test done. The University of Minnesota offers soil tests through their soil testing laboratory. Detailed instructions on how to submit a soil sample for testing can be found on the U of M website. I'll be briefly going over how to submit a sample today. So you'll just want to scrape away any mulch or leaves or anything that's covering your actual soil. And you'll want to collect soil from 1 to 6 inches down into your garden bed. I'm just using this measuring cup to sort of scoop out how much I'm collecting. And I'm taking from a few different spots throughout the garden. This is a very small raised bed, so honestly, it's probably fine even if I weren't. But if you're working with a larger garden, it is important to make sure you're capturing several spots throughout your garden. All right, so here's my soil sample. I'm going to drop this off today at the soil testing laboratory. If you're not local, the U of M has instructions for how to mail in your sample. So this is a very important first step before you add any soil amendments to your garden. While we wait for our soil test results to get back, we can cover some different soil amendment options. So as I said earlier in the video, soil amendments can be used to address a lot of different soil concerns. One such concern is texture. So all soils are made up of different sand, clay, and silt particles, and the overall proportion of these different particles determines your soil's texture. One way you can determine soil texture is just to wet your garden soil and give it a squeeze, and different soil textures will react differently. So sandy soil will fall apart in your hand, silty soil will sort of get slippery, and then clay soil will be firm and moldable. So based on how this soil is reacting, I would say it is somewhere between a sandy and a silty soil. To address sandy soils, you can add things like vermiculite, coconut coir, compost, or manure. If you choose to add compost or manure, they have the added benefit of also improving your soil's organic content. Sometimes peat moss is also sold as a soil amendment to address sandy soils. I do not personally recommend using peat moss because the process of harvesting peat moss is very harmful to the environment. For clay soils, you can add things like sawdust, perlite, straw, wood chips, or compost. Again, adding compost has the added benefit of increasing organic content. If you have clay soils, it can sometimes be tempting to add sand into your soil to try and break it up. But this mixture of clay and sand will actually start to make cement over time, and so you can end up with a garden that is pretty much impossible to garden with. So if you have clay soils, definitely use soil amendments to address that issue, but keep away from sand. Our soil test will also give us information on our soil's pH, or how acidic or basic our soil is. This is important because pH can determine how easily other soil nutrients are taken up by your plant. In general, you want to aim for a soil pH between 6 and 7, which is slightly acidic to neutral. There are certain plants that will prefer soils that are more acidic or more basic, but keeping your soil pH generally neutral is good for a wide range of gardening needs. To lower your soil's pH, you can add things like sulfur, ammonium sulfate, or aluminum sulfate. And to raise your garden's pH, you can add things like wood ashes or garden lime. And all of these soil amendments should be available at local garden centers. Soil organic content is also something that can be improved through adding different soil amendments. So organic content is important because it will increase your soil's water retention, nutrient availability, microbe activity, and texture. There are many different gardening techniques that you can use to improve organic content, such as planting a cover crop, reducing tillage. But if you want to improve your organic content through soil amendments, you can add things like compost, worm castings, or manure. You can also use different soil amendments to improve your garden's nutrient content. So the 3 main nutrients you'll want to monitor in your garden are nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And I want to make a note that sometimes potassium is called potash in garden context. So if you see potash labeled on different fertilizer options, just know that that's talking about potassium. To increase nitrogen, you can add things like blood meal, cottonseed meal, kelp meal, or alfalfa meal. To increase phosphorus, you can add things like bone meal, cottonseed meal, or rock phosphate. And to increase potassium, you can add kelp meal or wood ash. And again, all of these things are available at most garden centers. Commercial fertilizers that have different ratios of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium are also options for your garden. If you go this route, you'll just want to make sure you wait to get your soil test results back, because on those results, you'll get recommendations from the University of Minnesota on which ratio is the best for your garden.
Hey everyone, I wanted to check back in because I got my soil test results back. It took about 3 weeks to get these results emailed to me, so why don't we take a look at what they say. So the U of M Soil Testing Lab will send you a results page that should look something like this. At the top, you'll see different estimated soil texture and different nutrient levels. And then they also have these color-coded bars at the middle of the page to help you interpret those results. My estimated soil texture was coarse. My pH was 7.5, so slightly alkaline. My organic matter, which for the purpose of these results is basically nitrogen content, was high in sort of that yellow range. My phosphorus content was very high, basically off the charts. And then my potassium content was medium, and we have this nice green bar. So I went back and I reviewed the footage of me actually taking the soil sample, and I feel like I did get some wood chips and foreign material in the sample, which I was not supposed to do. So I'm not sure if that's why my phosphorus came back so high, or if there actually is that much phosphorus in the garden. But either way, I'm going to trust these results, and I will just refrain from adding any sort of soil amendment to this garden that contains phosphorus. Other than the phosphorus being very high, my other nutrient levels looked pretty good, but I did want to talk about pH for a second. So my pH was 7.5, which is a totally fine pH. But this garden is actually my sister's garden, and she is really hoping to grow blueberry bushes, and blueberries prefer quite acidic soils. So even though my pH is fine, I would like to add an amendment to this garden to sort of better match the pH to the plants that we are trying to grow. So I will be looking for a soil amendment that can lower the pH of my soil, but for now I will purchase that soil amendment, and then I'll meet you back in the garden when it's time to add it.
All right, I'm back at my sister's garden today, and I'm ready to amend the soil based on our soil test results. So I ended up purchasing this just commercially available soil acidifier, which contains sulfur, so I will demonstrate adding that to this garden today. So you'll always want to follow package instructions to figure out how much of any given soil amendment you'll want to add. It's also helpful to know your garden's square footage, so make sure you measure that beforehand, because that will help you calculate how much to add. According to this package, I'll want to add 1 1/4 cups of this amendment to each blueberry bush, so that's what I'm going to do. The package instructions will also tell you the best time of year to amend your soil, depending on what you're using, and the best time of year will also depend on what your overall goals are for amending your soil. Springtime, before you've planted your garden, is generally a great time to add soil amendments because the garden will be empty, so it makes it really easy to incorporate things evenly. If you add things in the summer, that's a good time to add booster amendments to sort of address whatever nutrient concerns you observe throughout the growing season. And adding stuff in the fall can also be a great way to get a jump on the following growing season, and it's a good time to add things that take longer to break down, like manure or compost. So your package instructions will also give you more details on how you want to amend your soil. If you're working in a smaller raised bed like I am today, you can just do this by hand or using a hand shovel. If you're working in a larger in-ground bed, it can be really helpful to use some larger tools like a hoe or tilling equipment. And according to this package, I just want to amend the soil around the drip line of the plant. So I'm just going to be working in this very small area today. All right, so there we have it. By knowing how to test the soil, interpret those results, and then select a soil amendment best suited for our needs, Hopefully we have set this blueberry bush up for success in the future. If you want 3 key takeaways from this video, I would say that number 1 is the soil amendments that work best for you will depend on your soil's texture, nutrient content, and the plants that you're trying to grow. Number 2 is always test your soil before picking out a soil amendment. And number 3 is always follow package instructions for the soil amendment that you're using. So that's all I have for you. Thank you so much for joining me on this extremely rainy day in the garden. And I hope you learned a bit about soil amendments and feel inspired to use them in your garden in the future.